morning and welcome everyone to our 201st episode of Blowback, Exposing Imperial Decline. I am one of your co-hosts, Billy Bob. I'm here in California on the West Coast. It is almost a little bit after 9 a.m. We got a little bit of a late start. I've got my regular co-host, Ian Cummer, streaming live from Crimea. And it's 7 p.m. in Crimea. Ian, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And our special guest, Greg Rosen, streaming live from Chicago, Illinois. I think it's 11 a.m. And I'm seeing that we're not streaming to one destination. I don't even know what destination that is. I'm seeing an error message.
It's
okay.
Okay,
No
you know
biggie.
what, this is your what's that Rumble account that you had?
Oh, yeah, no, Rumble is ridiculously difficult to stream to. So, today's episode entitled "Will the Empire Survive Donald Trump?" Okay, it's great for discussion purposes. So, we have different perspectives on what is going on, and so I think that Donald Trump, of course, is being used, and he will be scapegoated. He is being used to do a lot of things that a lot of people will not be happy about, humanity. And except, who's going to be happy about those things he's doing? The global transnational Western oligarchy, that he works for and who he represents. So those people really want him to do these really bad things the rest of humanity doesn't want to have happen. And then, of course, they're going to turn on him, and this transnational oligarchy is going to blame him for all the bad things, while at the same time, behind the scenes, they're going to be like, thank you, Donald Trump, for doing all these terrible things that are disastrous for humanity. So, I mean, that's my nutshell perspective on, how the empire relates to Donald Trump, But that brings us, to another topic. And I don't know how many people saw the thumbnail of this episode, but it kind of it's discussing two different perspectives on how the vassals, how the rest of the global mostly Western vassals think about what Trump is doing. So on the one hand, we see that a lot of them are unhappy, right? They're all blaming Trump. This is bad. This is awful. Trump's a madman. Trump's causing chaos. What is Trump doing? Trump is, he's going to collapse things. And, and they seem to be not happy and kind of opposing what Trump's doing. But, my perspective on all that is that it's theater, it's political theater. And it's like I explained at the outset, where they're very happy he's doing what he's doing because they share the same worldview. And they recognize that China is a threat, is an existential threat to their own, core interests, to their own exploitative system, where they're on the top and they're unthreatened by, the interests of the majority. And in each country, this is kind of the situation that occurs. There's, the majority of working class people, have certain interests, and they're opposite the interests of the ruling oligarchy. And so the ruling oligarchy in all these vassal states understands that, we have to fight this fight against China because China is an existential threat to the way things are. And so from this perspective, they're not being coerced. They are being, willing partners, junior partners in this grand strategy to, not to be too repetitive, Ian, but, the strategy is to create a global energy scarcity, monopolize the remaining energy that's left. Go ahead.
Billy Bob,
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but we have a technical complaint. Jace, can you tell us what channel you are watching this on? It looks like you're on YouTube. Are you on one of our YouTube channels? Because that might be a problem shared by other people. It's one person. Otherwise, it might be a you problem. But can you tell us real quick? I guess not. But anyways,
Let me see if I can go to YouTube and see what I see.
Okay, yes. I mean, which channel, Jace? I know you're on YouTube, but which are you on the are you on Billy Bob's personal channel? Are you on the I know you're on YouTube, but
Blowback's working.
Yeah, I just checked my own YouTube channel. So, if people are having technical issues, we apologize. I'm not
try
sure.
restarting. I know it's so generic, but try closing out your app or browser and I know it's such a generic advice, but try that because it looks like it's working. But anyways, yeah, Billy Bob, sorry to
Maybe I can put another link in the comments to the Facebook live stream. Or yeah, Jace, you can go to my Facebook. We're streaming live on Facebook. Oh, it's good. Okay.
Okay. Anyway,
so
sorry for the interruption, but yeah.
I'm going to accuse Ian and Jace of deliberately interrupting my monologue and making me lose my train of thought entirely. So, we're talking about different perspectives on how the vassal states are relating and dealing with what I see as this grand strategy, to create a global energy monopoly and then weaponize that monopoly against China and, probably start a proxy war against China, just like we started a proxy war, a hot war against Iran and a proxy war against Russia. This is the future of this strategy. So from that perspective, I don't feel that the vassal states, the governments are being coerced, so to speak. I think they're willing partners, and they understand that the Europeans, for instance, that they're happy with the fact that they are really going to immiserate their population, that their working class population are being victimized by this policy, and they don't care about that. They're not having to be coerced to that because, again, from their perspective, the working class is a threat. And so they have no interest in identifying working class interests and working to further those interests. Like, that is not what the capitalist class cares about. And so, their top priorities are, dealing with this threat from China and maintaining their global hegemony throughout the rest of the 21st century. And that's number one. And if they have to cause hardship for their working class, majority of their individual nation states, they're more than happy to do that. Now, any nation state that has an actual government that that actually represents the working class. So, for instance, Spain, who knows? Spain is pretending, at least, maybe for reals, right? They're saying, we're not going to be part of this. We're not going to let the United States use our military bases, and we're going to go straight to China, and we're going to negotiate some trade deals with China to show that we are truly sovereign and we are not going to be bullied by the United States. Now, to whatever extent that is not theater, that is where the coercion does come in, and you will definitely see, those governments overthrown very quickly in one way or another. There will be pressure applied in any number of ways, and you could see some coercion. But, I'm number one skeptical that they're actually doing anything other than performing, theatrics, performative theatrics. But if it turns out that, they are serious, and, when push comes to shove, they align themselves with China, well, they're going to be the enemy, and they're going to be, really attacked, and they're weak because Spain is like a little country in the middle of Western Europe, and they will be quickly fucked. Okay, so anyway, I'm rambling. I'm kind of explaining one approach, one perspective of how U.S. vassals are responding to this grand strategy that their working class is being victimized by. I don't want to put words in Greg's mouth, and I also don't want to put him on the spot to elaborate on his counter perspective. Go ahead.
I do think I don't want to speak for Greg either. I want to hear his take. I do think you're putting his words in his mouth a little bit because I've listened to the last couple of shows he's been on, and I've sort of probably 70 or 80% agreed with him, at least on this topic. It's not that Europe, and I don't think anyone claims Europe is independent. They're very dependent on the USA. right? Their governments and their politicians are extremely compromised in their own ways. Like if you research each individual guy, you can see all this corruption and just in codependence with American business. I don't think Greg was saying that. I don't think anyone's really saying that. The question is, how much can Trump get away with before they just don't have a choice but to realign or just sink? Because we're not even talking about, German citizens having a more expensive, energy bill. It's like, that German and European power and the stuff that those elites actually want falls through because Trump, drove the bus off a cliff. So they haven't straight up, opposed him on Iran for the most part, but they're clearly unhappy, especially because this is severely screwing up the war on Russia, which they do care a lot about. So that's just my interjection. I want to hear what Greg's opinion is.
Yeah, I mean, I would, I don't think they're supporting what's happening. I think they're truly disgruntled. And, the split with Germany is real to me. And like Ian's saying, they feel this is detracting from what's really important, plus wrecking their economies in ways they don't know how to manage.
No,
I mean, I don't see the evidence of support. And also, I don't really see them enthusiastic about trade war or proxy war or any kind of war with China.
Okay,
what would be the... Sorry.
It's okay. I mean, two very different perspectives, right? I mean, so there's a stark contrast. There's a stark contrast between my perspective and the way you see things. So how can we, what accounts for that? What can you maybe elaborate on what you see and why you think that that's true, that they're not happy and they're in opposition to what specifically? To the future pivot with China that we haven't really seen?
Yeah, I mean, no evidence they're on board the war with Iran. And I think they're pretty ambivalent to hesitant to outright resisting trade war with China. And they were kind of going along or being dragged along for a while, but as you were talking about, it's starting to reverse. Actually, they're making trade deals with China now.
Well, it depends on who they are, and for every theatrical pivot,
Europeans, Canadians,
to be friends with China, you'll see them do something that's the opposite. So okay, so let's talk. Go ahead.
I want to bring up, just to back up, there's just maybe some context here. It's not the first time there has been friction between Europe and USA when it comes to the Middle East. If we look at 2003, Saddam's Food for Oil program, because he was very heavily sanctioned. He'd been sanctioned at that point for more than 2 decades, I guess. And he was a major oil partner for France. And if you guys remember, France was very unhappy when Bush just kind of announced out of the blue, because they had all backed him on Afghanistan, like, okay, it's just Afghanistan trains these terrorists who directly attacked you. Everybody was kind of not questioning that story and was going along with it. There was even that Article 5 activation, which Europeans talk about to the present day. Oh, you owe us. But France was very, very unhappy because that was their stomping ground. That was their footholds their economic and political footholds in the Middle East. And Bush stomped that out. So that really damaged and humiliated France. If you guys remember, so France is also one of the possibly the only exception to a NATO member that's not fully in the military cooperation. They're actually, I think it was Charles de Gaulle, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Charles de Gaulle who withdrew France from and they ousted him for it. But so you can see there is some pushback. It's not like it's this hegemonic hive mind, there's like an alien brain, in a basement somewhere that's it's mentally controlling them. There is factionalism, there is division, and conflicts of interest. And also, Billy Bob, you mentioned Spain. I do want to bring up Spain was also one of the countries that was now Spain is honestly one of the weaker, smaller members of the European Union, so it's like it doesn't matter very much, but they did also push back a lot on Iraq, so it's not a first for them either. I just wanted to point those two things out before we
So I think a good way to maybe engage, this discussion is pointing out how there's two kind of ideological frameworks with which to view the world, right? So the first one is the reality of nation states and seeing nation states as primary actors and seeing each nation state as pursuing, the economic interests of that nation state. So the government of each nation state, identifies and pursues that nation state's interest. So if that's your
interest
framework,
of the ruling class.
Well, yeah. So I mean, the national interest, according to the liberal framework, so the liberal framework doesn't really see class, right? So the liberal framework focuses on nation states as the primary actors. And it said, it asserts that, the governments of individual nation states, represent the people of that country, and they identify and they pursue the interests, of that country. And so often, in the anarchic world that we live in, all kinds of things happen because, different states do different things, and then different states react to that, and then you just have what we have. It's anarchy, it's chaos. And you scratch your head. It's like, why is this country doing this? That doesn't seem to be in the interest of this country. And so, what I argue is that, this perspective alone, if it doesn't incorporate, the idea of class, leads to confusion, because what you see is governments not acting in their own rational best interest, in their sovereign interest. You see them doing things that make no sense. And so, my argument is that, if you incorporate the reality of oppositional class interests within each nation state into your framework, then, what the governments are doing can make more sense, right? You can make more sense out of, certain national behaviors, because you realize that, the point isn't to benefit this nation per se. The point is to benefit, this Western class of individuals. And I argue that, the ruling class of these individual countries have more loyalty to their class than they do to any nation state they happen to come from. So the idea that a ruling class has loyalty or allegiance to a state, I think, is fundamentally flawed. And so I like the disagreement. But, so what you see is that, their loyalty to their class subordinates their loyalty to, their individual nation state. And so when you look at it like that, to me, it makes a lot of sense. But no, I appreciate Greg has a nuanced, distinction to make and some disagreement. So what specifically are we going to push back against, Greg, on my diatribe there?
Well, I mean, we could go two directions.
Okay.
We don't see much evidence of what you're saying in regards to Iran or China. So if it's happening, it's, behind the scenes, a conspiracy, and they're acting. And then just Marxist theory wise, the ruling class, the capitalist class, expresses their power by using the state. And there is no substitute for one's individual state. They need the rule of law. They need diplomacy. They need property rights, potentially, military to enforce their interests. And you can't get that from another state.
Yeah, well, let's discuss those one at a time. And so I want to go back to your first one, and then I want to go to your second one. But so the first thing you said again, Greg.
We don't see a lot of evidence above the surface of what you're saying, that the Asian and European allies are really backing Trump despite, objecting in various ways. So, I mean, I would be totally hidden behind the scenes conspiracy type.
Well, let's bring
So,
up Gulf War. Let's bring up Desert Storm. Desert Storm, they did unequivocally back the USA because they sent troops, or almost 1 million soldiers from I think 4 or 5 different countries. And then even in 2003, you can already see that while there was still some international backing, it was weaker. Only Britain and like a token force of like 100 Polish guys participated in 2003 invasion. So you can see like several, not just France, most of the European countries like, you know what, we're not touching this. So it's not that they didn't oppose it per se, but they weren't. You can see it's a cooler, much less enthusiasm. And here they're actually talking about blocking. I mean, it's for them, for someone that's been so docile for so long, you do see actual noises. They're threatening to, I mean, they've been saying that for a couple of years with Trump. They're threatening to go to China. And they're, closing airspace. There's things that could actually, and I'd say the main one is, Trump does need international help if he is going to win in Iran. He's not getting it from them. So, I mean, on the course he's on now, he's going to lose unless Europe offers their infrastructure and troops and ships to help win the war. If they don't, he's going to lose. So it's kind of hard. So, I do have to double down on what Greg said. There's not really a whole lot of evidence for the idea that they're all working together behind the scenes when there's visible pushback.
Well, okay. So if you take each little thing in isolation and don't connect it to the grander strategy, I can see how what you're saying makes sense. And I think what we should do though is to see everything as a comprehensive a strategy. And so, the war against Iran, the war against Russia, I mean, these are both, necessary, steps to dealing with China. And I definitely see, I see total complicity with this. Now, there's reasons why they give lip service and oppose what's going on in Iran. It's because it's very unpopular and it's going to be catastrophic. And so they have to posture themselves as if they are in opposition to it because it is disastrous for their countries. But again, my suggestion is that, they are on board this grand strategy, and this grand strategy can't be seen, these individual wars can't be seen in isolation. Like, that doesn't make any sense to look at Iran as it's an isolated event. No, Iran is a stepping stone to Russia, to China, just like, the special military operation and the coup in Ukraine, is an effort to deal with Russia, as a stepping stone to China. So to see things, in isolation, I think it's just a fundamental mistake. And I think if you look at the big picture, it's clear that these vassals are all in, despite their necessary lip service to confuse liberals and get them to think that, the government really opposes what Trump is doing. Because again, what Trump is doing is going to be catastrophic. It's going to be catastrophic for the United States, and it's going to be catastrophic for Western Europe, and it's going to be catastrophic for Asia. And so, of course, the governments are trying to distance themselves and scapegoat Trump personally for everything that happens, while at the same time, they are totally on board with this because they know that China represents an existential threat to their global system. So, I mean, this is my argument. And I appreciate it. And I can see how, looked at isolation, this thing that Trump is doing, and I'm making scare quotes because I don't think it's Trump, right? This thing that Trump is doing in Iran, has just spooked them, and they're all opposed to it. Like, I think that's theater. And I think that, that is just one aspect of the broader strategy which I've talked about incessantly here. It's, manufacturing an artificial energy scarcity around the planet, and then leveraging U.S. domestic production as well as the production that we control in Canada and Mexico, in Venezuela, perhaps, maybe the UAE, but the UAE is probably going to get destroyed here. And then, really leveraging that for the benefit of the ruling class, and using it to weaken, China, Russia, etc. So anyway, I mean, that's the framework, that's the theory that I think is true, and I've been promoting and pushing for a couple years now. But so if you disagree with that, yeah, I can understand how you could come to the conclusion that Trump doesn't make any, what he's doing doesn't make any sense. The vassals oppose it, etc., etc., etc. But if
would unify the two
Greg,
wars, okay, by saying they're both, late empire fuck ups. Actually, all the planning and white paper about Ukraine and Russia said don't trigger a full war because we'll lose. And, like we've talked about many times, all inherited wisdom said don't go to war with Iran because all of these things will go wrong. And I mean, the idea that this is a stepping stone for China doesn't make any sense. The U.S. is disarmed. All of the economies are weakened. And, by all accounts, China's weathering this better than any power except maybe Russia.
No. So again, time will tell, and you could be proven right? If there is no pivot to China, if the United States loses in Iran and the empire collapses, before they even start their plans. And I'm saying, this strategy, we're at maybe the 10% mark of this strategy, and we haven't even seen the main thing, which is going to be the pivot to China. So I hope you're right. I hope that pivot to China doesn't happen. I don't really. I think you're right insofar as you're saying that it's a futile effort and the strategy is going to fail. But I don't think that you're right that, the United States is just going to be collapsing anytime soon, or they're going to give up. They're not going to give up on this plan because, it's existential. It is existential, and they are prepared to cause serious harm, serious catastrophe to humanity and our planet. They're willing to do that, and they're going to do that, to maintain their hegemony, to have a chance to be the unrivaled superpower that does not have to be, that is not constrained by China, that is not constrained by Russia. So this is the direction that we're going, and we have not seen any suggestion that the U.S. is going to live in peace and mutual prosperity with China. Of course, at the same time, I'm saying that, from a theoretical framework that I'm embracing, and I can't, point to actual, because we haven't seen the embargo against China. We've seen it rolled out a little bit, right? So we know that China gets 90% of Iranian oil, and we still see China receiving Iranian oil, but we do see an embargo in place. So we see, step by step, inch by inch, moving towards what I'm describing as this grand strategy. And I don't see the Europeans opposing this. I see them pretending to distance themselves because they know in the future it's going to be catastrophic, and they don't want to be tainted with it. They don't want to be, it'd be said that they were partly responsible for it. So that explains their posturing in opposition to what's going on in Iran, while at the same time, they're all in the general strategy, and especially with Russia, right? Like, Russia's not a real threat to them, Greg, and everybody fucking knows it, but they buy into that lie, because that's the lie that is politically palatable to their people. What's not politically palatable is this Iran thing, and so they're giving lip service, trying to distance themselves from Iran, while they're going all in on the Russia hook, and both of them are unnecessary and not beneficial, other than it's going to help them achieve this overarching objective of unipolar global hegemony like they enjoyed after 1991. So, but to get back to that place, they have to defeat China. And I don't see, I see everything being rolled out in preparation for a future, showdown with China, where you can leverage and weaponize your energy monopoly that is being created right now. So that's my framework.
Well, okay. I want to ask. I mean, you brought it up several times. The whole, Trump is a scapegoat and all that. Well, I mean, after Trump's first term, a lot of people went to jail, and I think all of the signs indicate it's going to be more extreme after the second term. And pretty much, I think pretty much everyone who supported Trump will be removed from whatever career he's in, and many of them will go to prison. I mean, so I think it's stretching. Maybe I just have a small imagination. It's hard for me to imagine hundreds of people, doing theater. I'm going to go to jail to prove that there's a faction, but I'm actually serving my class by going to a federal prison for 5 to 10 years. Like, I think Steve Bannon, for example, is still in prison. A lot of people are on a very thin.
No, I thought Steve Bannon got freed a long time ago. I might be wrong.
Well, he might have been. I don't know. But he went to jail. It's hard to imagine, these people go to jail for years often.
I'm going to push back against that. No, the only way you go to jail if you're at that level is if you, do something against the class interest. If you fight, if you harm the class, then you're going to be held accountable. But I don't see Trump. I don't see.
We have a new era of lawfare in the U.S., which we didn't before. I mean, Trump's trying to lock up people from the Obama and Biden years, and vice versa.
Yeah, no, he's not going after Biden. He's not going after Obama, and they're not going to go after Trump, especially. This is my opinion, right? And again, I'm speaking from this framework that sees Trump as, and that's why I just disagree with Ian's assertion that he's going to face jail time. I think.
I didn't say Trump is going to face jail time. I didn't say that. I didn't say.
Okay, no, I thought that's what you said. 3 to 5 years.
I said a lot of people who support him. I mean, Jad Sixers. There were quite a few very affluent.
Yeah, and he pardoned a whole bunch of those guys.
Well, but after they were in jail for 4 years, they're at.
Yeah. He cares about that. Okay,
it's incredible for me to imagine. I mean, some of these guys were in solitary confinement for basically the entire.
But that is not in any way contradicting anything I'm saying. Like, that fact is not a.
How is that theater? How is that theater? Are they all pretending?
Because they don't give a fuck about those people, Ian. Those aren't people that matter. They don't care about those people. Working class idiots who supported Trump. What the fuck do they care?
They're not working class. They're not working class.
Okay, so they're billionaires. So some billionaires were in prison.
Okay, so I just want, because you throw around, because capitalists aren't all billionaires. Ownership class aren't all billionaires. So we're talking specifically, there's a select few billionaires who are controlling the entire world, and every political disagreement in the world is being manufactured for theater by this one group of. I mean, it's like Alex, it's Alex Jones kind of level conspiracy here.
So what is happening here right now, Ian, is that you don't know anything other than the liberal framework, and so because the concept of class, you don't understand that, and so all you can think about is a secret cabal conspiracy. But that's not what class is. That's not how class operates. And that's not, there's a logic of capitalism. There's a logic of capital. There's a tendency, and not everything is in a conspiracy. It's individuals pursuing their own material interests. And then there's a class that coalesces around a class interest. And then the class interest is identified and pursued. And it doesn't have to be just a few people in dark suits in a back room doing things. It's identifying and pursuing class, and a lot of it happens automatically. I mean, so to think conspiratorially is a liberal trying to understand a concept that is foreign to them. I mean, that's kind of what it is. But maybe Greg can help me, try and maybe explain the concept.
Well, I
of
would,
class.
go in the middle here and say that, there's class interest as well as, factional conflict between different parts of the same class. I mean, I think the lawfare in the U.S. is real. I don't think it's just theater.
But
And,
the
the
lawfare
friction between
never
Germany
ends
and
up
the U.S. is real.
significantly harming billionaires, right? You don't see billionaires going to prison. You don't see super rich important people going to
I
prison.
mean, I think they tried to knock out Trump for 4 years.
Well, I mean, so how much is political theater, and how much is it about maintaining political? So again, it's not to punish Trump for wrongdoing. It's there's a competition. There's a competition for to hold power. There's definitely a competition to have levers of power to determine policy, but it's not like they personally want to see him dead, because so they're using him like Trump
dead,
is being
but
used.
I mean, I think isn't he the first one that legally pursued after leaving office? That broke like hundreds of years of norm here.
Well, no, there was absolutely lawfare against him trying to wreck his political aspirations. There was a struggle. There was a power struggle within the ruling establishment.
Which is different.
But
I mean, we've never seen anything like that before.
No, I would say there was unprecedented. Yeah, there was definitely unprecedented aspects of the power struggle with the whole Russiagate hoax, right? Then the Ukrainegate hoax. Like, it was a struggle to turn and shift U.S. policy to what it is now. But now, I mean, there's no actual resistance, right? So now they're hoping that they will be able to use Trump. This is my argument. They're going to be using Trump to do all these things that they really want done, namely prioritizing China and weakening China. So again, if you read the that security document for 2026, right, it lists our security objectives and our security priorities. Number one is defending the homeland of the United States. Number two is containing and weakening China. So this is a class effort, by the entirety of the Western transnational oligarchy, and defeating China is the number one priority. And I mean, and I say number one priority because nobody's threatening the homeland. So defending the homeland really is just a nonsense kind of thing, because nobody's threatening to invade the continental United States. So their number one priority is China. And again, everybody is on board with this. And so they are happy to support Trump in any way they can, while at the same time, they want to distance themselves from the awful fallout that is necessarily going to come due to their efforts. You cannot make an effort to weaken China economically through the strategies that they're planning, through global energy scarcity, through global energy monopolization, and then weaponizing that monopoly to keep the world's manufacturer from being able to do what they're doing. Like, none of that is going to happen without catastrophic effects on the global economy. And they want to blame all of that on Trump. And this is what this is the benefit he's providing. Now, in a recent post, I've done parallels between what's going on now and how kind of they used the guy named Hitler in before World War II to do the same thing, right? The global Western capitalist oligarchy, I would say it's the exact same people that have managed who are in power today. They were threatened by the Soviet Union. It was an existential threat to their system. And so what they did was they lifted up, they supported, funded, armed Hitler, and then unleashed him against the Soviet Union. And then what do they do in the aftermath? Then they scapegoated him for the causing all of those problems that they enabled him to create. And so I see a very similar parallel going on now with what they're doing with Trump. They're more than happy to embrace him, to utilize him, to further their class interests that'll be disastrous and catastrophic. And then at the end of that, they're going to say, hey, that wasn't us. It was Trump. So, I mean, this is the picture that I see very clearly. And you know, I appreciate the opportunity to articulate it, but I want to hear you know, pushback, different views.
Well, it just seems like that, you know, when we do give you examples of how that doesn't make sense, you tell us, well, those are just in isolation. And we just still don't see any compelling evidence here. And I also think I want to bring up, oh gosh, where's this comment? I want to bring up, okay, define, if someone asked me, Daryl asked me to define our terms. And actually, I want to define the terms too, because I think we're getting a little sloppy with our terms here, because you don't have to be a billionaire. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You do not have to be a billionaire to be a capitalist, correct? Because I've never heard that before. That you have to be. And then if you, okay, so let me finish. So if you're you have to be a billionaire to be a capitalist, and if you're not a billionaire, you're working class. I have never in my life heard that definition before, ever. I mean, you could make the distinct. I mean, we could distinguish between oligarchs and capitalists, like, you know, the very top. We could define the very top 1%. But just saying, I mean, tons of people. There are millions of people in the USA who are in the capitalist class. You own a factory, you are a capitalist. You own a law firm, you are a capitalist. You own a medical clinic, you are a capitalist, because you own some form of means of production. You control labor and capital. So maybe just define the terms we're using, because I think we're being a little sloppy.
I mean, I can explain my perspective. Did you want to say something before that, Greg?
No,
okay.
go ahead.
Yeah.
So I mean, no. So there's nuance and there's ways to understand it. So obviously, when we talk about class, we talk about how one relates to the means of production. The vast majority of us relate to the means of production as workers, and some workers get paid a hell of a lot. You know, professional athletes, and you know, and so they're very wealthy. And so, to the extent that they identify with and support the capitalist class and support, you know, the order that exists, you know, they're capitalists and they're influential capitalists, even if they're technically, you know, belong to the working class because of how they relate to the means of production. The exact same thing is true about certain people in the ownership class. If you run a mom and pop corner market and you identify with the proletariat and you oppose the current class relations where the ruling class is the ownership class, and you want to put a party in place that represents the working class, you know, even though you are an owner by technicality because you own your mini mart, that still doesn't put you, you know, to me, that doesn't make you, you know, a capitalist. So when I talk about the capitalist class, I'm referring to the richest, most wealthy and powerful individuals within that class who have the power to set policy, to decide policy. They have the power and the ability to buy politicians. They have the power and ability to buy actual political parties. Like, these are the people who are powerful, and they all have allegiance to themselves. And they're not going to be throwing themselves in prison unless you do something to betray the class interest. Those are the people that are going to be going to prison, or lower people, functionaries, you know, lower functionaries that, you know, support the capitalist class, but they end up being scapegoated, you know, for political purposes. And that's all just more theater than anything. So that was my best effort. Go ahead, Ian.
This is very woke. I mean, this is very woke, Billy Bob. I don't think you can't. I mean, no. I mean, I'm not. I don't even identify as a communist. But no, you can't just say I identify with the working class. If you own a mini mart, you are a capitalist. And by the way, I know several. I've met several of those people. None of those people are like. I know you just I mean, it is propaganda. It's like, oh, it's a mom and pop business. None of those people are poor. They're all millionaires. Basically, every single person who owns those mini marts is a millionaire, even if they don't present themselves as one. And
Mark,
so
they own more than one.
There's two distinctions to make here.
I mean, they're not billionaires. They're not billionaires, but they're millionaires.
Well,
they're capitalists.
yeah, I mean, in Marxism, right? Those are petty bourgeois, the ones in the middle that they can kind of go either way. And, the full capitalists are ones that live fully off their capital, don't need to work.
And the more wealthy you are, the more you benefit from the system, and the more likely you are to not be a class trader, right? Because class traders exist. And so I was describing class traders. The mom and pop shop that identifies with the proletariat and supports the Communist Party, they would technically be class traders. And the more wealth you have, the more benefit you get from the system, the more power you have, the less likely you are to be a class trader. And the more influence you have in deciding policy, identifying interests, and figuring out, what the best strategy is to pursue those interests. So, there's a hierarchy. And so I like to just call it the billionaire class, because guess what? Even the petite bourgeoisie, even if you're you're worth $50 million, you still, you definitely identify with capital. Capital has been great to you, and you're going to resist and fight people who want to overthrow this system that has given you $50 million. But you're still not wealthy enough to buy a political party. You're not wealthy enough to get somebody in the presidency that's going to do something for you specifically. And so there's degrees, there's nuance, and you have to understand that, reality is complex. And so we use, paradigms to describe the kind of, things that exist. And you can always get more detailed and more, granular in your explanation about, how things work. But ultimately, I like to refer to it as a billionaire class, because it's the billionaires, the Western billionaire elites, who are really the ones that are the primary, the greatest beneficiaries of this imperialist system. And they are the ones that are most dedicated into defending it and maintaining it and destroying any obstacle that opposes it. Any power that thinks that they can, be an obstacle to what they want to do, they will target and they will work to, destroy. So that is the grand strategy that is going on currently. And this is why, the Iran war and the Russia war are part of a broader plan, part of a greater plan. And I'm making that assertion, and it's going to be great, guys. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to lose my mind when we actually start seeing the pivot to China, when we start seeing the embargo against China, and when we start seeing maybe a proxy war trying to be waged against China. Because this is the inevitable trajectory. And what I'm hearing is that you guys don't see it, and it's frustrating. You guys don't think it's going to happen. But in my opinion, it absolutely is going to happen. And these other things that we see happening, they are just stepping stones to that. And without these stepping stones, that could not happen. So this is just this is the shaping of the global battlefield by the Western elites, in order to prepare for a final confrontation with China, where they really hope to do everything they can to weaken China and maintain their global hegemony throughout the rest of the 21st century. It's going to be catastrophic, but it's coming. And so I appreciate you guys, again, listening to me, because, I might sound to you guys like a crazy person, and you guys just have to roll your eyes and listen to me. But I am so certain that this is what we're going to see, and then I'm going to lose my mind, because I'm going to be like, I told you so. But that's just not gonna be cathartic enough to say I told you so. Anyway,
I will just interject that if you can find me one, not even more than one, just one store owner in the United States who is a communist, I will personally pay membership to the American Communist Party. That's my bet. I will fill myself paying a membership due to the American Communist Party if you can find me one store owner who is a communist, who identifies as a communist. But and Greg, unless there's something you wanted to add on that, maybe we could go to the China argument, Billy Bob's China argument, unless there's something else you wanted to add.
Yeah, I wanted to just jump in about you. I think, Ian, you have a tighter Marxist understanding, in my opinion, than Billy here, because class is truly not about identification. It's about relationship to the means of production. And, the example, Engels, right? That's not what Marxism's built on. He's an anomaly, not how we understand class identification or class identity. And,
What?
I think the larger conspiracy theory also depends on something like that, where these foreign capitalists are completely against their own material interests to back Trump.
Okay, so you made 2 points, and I didn't quite appreciate either one fully. So the first point was about strict Marxism, and you mentioned Engels.
Yeah, I mean, Engels is like, a class traitor, important one,
Right,
but
yeah.
he didn't get into the theory. That's not part of Marxism, is, that there's groups of capitalists that identify with workers or vice versa.
Well, I mean, we know there was a famous talk between, was it Zhao Enlai and Khrushchev? I mean, you know what I'm referencing?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so, I guess Zhao Enlai was talking with Khrushchev, and, things weren't going very well, because Khrushchev had shat all over Stalin, lied about him, and Zhao Enlai was talking to him, and how did that go? I was going to tell the story, and I just realized I have to think about it. So basically, okay, so Khrushchev was lauding the fact that he was working class, and he was accusing Zhao Enlai of being, bourgeoisie, because Zhao Enlai came from a wealthy capitalist family, right? A well-to-do family. But yet, Zhao Enlai, was one of the greatest officials in the Communist Party, in the history of China, and everyone, loved him. And Zhao Enlai's response was, yes, we're both race traders, or not race traders. We're both class traders. We're both traders to our class. And so, I don't know. I kind of push back on an appeal to orthodox Marxism. Like, I don't know what that means. I think that, Marxism technically.
Well, it means class is material, and those are anomalies, not what the theory is based on.
No, but the theory, the theory is adaptable to reality, and so let's not have a dogmatic theory and then reject reality. So the reality is that there are individuals who are technically working class because they make millions of dollars working for a corporation, and yet they identify with the capitalist class, and they have been captured by the desire to maintain and perpetuate the material relationship that exists under capitalism. They don't want to so in that sense, that they fight for and support capitalist relations, even though they're working class, they're just class traders. And you see that a lot. Most people in the United States are class traders. Most working class people are class traders. I'm on Facebook, a lot, talking to class traders, and they're just telling me how great capitalism is, and they're gonna, they want me to die because I'm a communist, So these are all class traders. It actually is. So it's not an anomaly so much.
Well,
right?
I mean, that's in Marxism as false conscious. I mean, that's in Marxism as false consciousness, not class trader. The fact that the most of the working class is confused and identified with the ruling class.
That's even simpler than that. It's hegemonic thinking, that there's every system has a hegemony,
right,
and the poorest person in that country or society or whatever is going to support that hegemony. Even it doesn't make him a class traitor. It's just he was educated and brainwashed to believe that. Yeah.
So, I don't know. So, to tell a professional athlete who makes $100 million a year that they have a false consciousness, like, I think it's in his, even though he technically is a worker, it's still in his material interest to support and defend the capitalist system. So, I understand there's theories like false consciousness, and that, they have use, they explain things. And
Marx's idea that the ideas of the ruling class are the ideas of society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think that contradicts anything I'm saying, though. Like, I think it totally coincides with with my perspective.
No one's disagreeing with you that you can go to a trailer park in Alabama and find a guy who thinks he's going to be a millionaire one day. No one is disagreeing with you. What we are disagreeing with you that you can find millionaires who are communists, who are class traders. I mean, I would, out of a country of 360 million people, I think you would struggle to find 10.
No, and so,
class traders.
well, but you say you're disagreeing with me about that. I don't remember saying that, right? I said it happens. I said there are class traders. Zhao Enlai is an
Well, it's
example.
part of your, I mean, I think it's part of the bigger conspiracy theory that all of the capitalist class of the elites are identified with Trump against their own interests.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm arguing is that you misunderstand their interests, that they understand their interests differently than you understand their interests, and that their interests involve, attaining global hegemony for their class throughout the rest of the 21st century. And to do that, they have to destroy China. To destroy China, they got to get.
There is no global hegemony for a class. There's global hegemony for a nation state and the ruling class within that class, within that state.
Okay, no, this is interesting. I haven't considered that. And when I first hear it, I want to just dismiss it. And so let me not do that. So, I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Like, it just seems counterintuitive. It seems like we did have a global hegemony for the Western ruling class in 1991. It was attained, and so
but it wasn't equally shared. It wasn't like the German and the South Korean and the Japanese ruling class were all benefiting exactly the same.
Right, but that was the same in the Soviet Union, right? Not every state, not every republic in the Soviet Union was benefiting the same. I mean, that's just
right. But that's one nation state, so it's a different animal.
But okay,
can I bring up a historical example? Maybe we should look at Russia.
I want to try and really understand. So okay, so your assertion that there is no such thing as class hegemony on a global basis, that is contradictory to something that I've said. So there's this is how I see it. So let me try and explain it this way. So on the planet, we have the working class. Ideally could move the planet towards socialism and then towards communism, right? And you can't have actual communism in a single state that's surrounded by capitalist states, right? Because they're going to ultimately come under attack. What?
According to Trotsky.
So if we define communism as again, like a borderless, stateless society where the workers own the means of production, like you can't have that in a specific geographic area that's surrounded by capitalist states, right? You can't have that. Is that possible? Can you have a borderless, stateless region?
Not borderless, not stateless, but you can get towards communism within a state.
No. I'm saying get to communism, not towards. Get to communism. Can you have communism in a state, in a region that's surrounded by capitalist enemies?
Not fully realized in the sense of no state.
And so what I'm saying is there's a global struggle to maintain the current capitalist system. And then there's a struggle to turn that global capitalist system into a global socialist and then communist system. So this is the class struggle. This is the class struggle manifesting in the 21st century. So this is the global class struggle. And the oligarchs in Western Europe understand that if they let China become the unipolar power, that China is going to inevitably drag the rest of the world towards a socialist ideal where these oligarchs are not going to have the privilege and power of the capitalist system that they currently enjoy. So they see as an existential interest to their power and privilege that they must defeat China. So I'm trying to, reference this with your rebuttal that there's no capital, there's no class global, there's no hegemonic global class. And what I'm saying is the hegemonic global class interest is to defeat socialism and to make sure that capitalism is the prevailing world, the prevailing global order, the prevailing global system.
So how does?
No, hold on, Ian. I'm sorry. Let me hear Greg's response because this is tough for me. I'm struggling here. I need to understand what Greg's saying.
Well, I don't think right now that China looks like they're about to spread communism all over the world to the point where they've unified all of the disparate capitalist classes around the world. They don't even have pretense like the Soviet Union did to do that.
No, I think what China represents and why it is perceived as an existential threat to the Western oligarchy is because of their power, right? And because of their economic power, because they're manufacturing based, because they're the number one trading partner. And
I don't know
because
if we
they're
have consensus that the entire capitalist world is preoccupied with China. The U.S. for sure. Ian, are you on board with the entire?
I fully agree. I'm struggling to think of even one European leader who is called China. I mean, I see that opinion all the time in the USA, but I've never seen that from Europe ever. I think they would I would actually dispute, and I would completely dispute this idea that China wants to expand the revolution. I don't think they give a shit about us. I think we're people to train. I'm sorry, Chinese don't give a shit about us. They care about China. They care about Chinese. They have their society the way they want it. They see us as guys in Europe and North America they can trade with.
So I'm just hearing that you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. That's all I'm hearing is that you misunderstand what I'm saying, and that's my fault. And discussion is difficult. Like it's difficult for me to articulate. I'm struggling to articulate and to deal with the responses you guys are giving, and I appreciate it. It's good. It's fun. It's necessary. But ultimately, I'm not saying that China is going to send their armies and force everyone to be communist. Like if that's what you heard, I do apologize. Let me restate, and maybe
you're proposing that the world is afraid of world communism.
Okay, go ahead, Greg. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're stating that the world realizes that eventually China will create a world communism, potentially.
Uncontainable. And that's a threat. That's a threat to their privilege and power and their system, because China will be demonstrating the vast superiority of socialism, and everyone will want to do that where they live too. That is not in the interest of the oligarchs. This is it. So it's not about China, spreading their dragon wings and breathing fire on the rest of the world and, telling everybody either convert to communism or die by the sword. No, it's just they are the example. And if they are uncontainable, they will start to, demonstrate the objective superiority of the socialist system. And everybody will say, why can't we do what China is going to do? And the oligarchs do not want to see that. They want to be able to say, communism always fails wherever it's tried. And so they want to destroy China. This is existential. And the oligarchs know this, and they are on board, and there's a strategy and there's a plan. That plan involves weaponizing an energy monopoly against China. It involves a future embargo against China. Billions of dollars have been invested in this project, maybe trillions. Trillions have probably been invested. There is no sign that this project is being given up. There is no sign that the U.S. is saying, you know what, we just can't do this. We're just going to have to live in peace and mutual prosperity with China. That is not what they're doing, guys. But cool. I mean, I appreciate getting me excited and fired up. And
we don't need to sit you to argue that they're worried about China sending armies. We would just like some evidence that Europe shares this fear of China, because I don't see any evidence for that.
Okay, well, they're all in on the strategy. Why do you think they allowed themselves to be immiserated by a lack of access to Russian oil? Like there's no
It's a
Because they
different
hate
war.
Russia. It has nothing
Right, it's
to
a
do with
different
China.
war.
Literally nothing to do with China. They hate
Right,
Russia.
okay.
They hate Slavs. They hate,
No,
there's feuds
and I
going
think
back hundreds of years.
And it's
Yeah.
their main imperialist goal right now is to get back
Yeah.
into Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, I don't see that. I think that the idea
There's
that
literally war.
what is driving these global events
It's China.
is hatred for Slavs. Like I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
laughable. But to say that again, I don't think it makes any sense to look at Iran and the Russian war out of context, isolated as individual events. I think that is a poor approach to analysis and understanding things. I think you have to look at what's actually going on. So again, if the strategy
Someone said they
and
were
if
isolated.
the strategy was to manufacture a global energy monopoly, Europe is playing right along with it. They're not resisting that. They're playing right along with it to their own detriment. And again, the only thing that explains it, in my thing is either, yeah, sure, they have an irrational hatred for Slavs, and this is driving global events. But I reject that. And they're on board with immiserating their own populations and turning their welfare states into warfare states for the good of the global hegemonic class interest of defeating these existential threats. And this is the same, it's very similar to World War II, where the Western global the Western capitalist class empowered fascism specifically to attack, the Soviet Union and destroy it. And so we're seeing a very similar thing now where they're all working together to target China, destroy China, and to hope that they will have a, like I said, a global hegemony throughout the rest of the 21st century once China is defeated. This is called short-term pain for long-term gain. But no, it's really good that you guys are pushing back and disagreeing with me and challenging me, because you know who doesn't do that? AI. AI tells me I'm totally right.
Okay, so let me bring up, I've been struggling to squeeze this example. Okay, so let me bring up Jacob, Greg, Jacob Schiff. I might be butchering his last name. So Jacob Schiff was a German Jew who was a banker in the USA in the early 20th century. And he was one of the major industrialists who was responsible for Imperial Japan's rise to power, and including their victory in the war with Russia. And Jacob Schiff's openly stated position for doing that was because he hated Russia and wanted, as a Jew, he hated Russia and wanted to. I'm not doing that to pick on Jews specifically. Just an example in industrials. He said it's because he hated, and Russia was not communist. No one, I don't think anyone in the world, except maybe Lenin and Stalin, thought Russia was going to be communist. It was not like it had nothing to do with communist. It was a Russian empire. It was imperialist. He just hated Russia, and that's why he did that. And he was a capitalist. I mean, so it's just very strange to say there's no nation states, there's no other motives.
Okay, no, I get it. Let me address it, but Greg can address it first if you want. I definitely have a lot to say on that topic.
No, go ahead. You can.
Okay, so yeah, Jacob Schiff is often of course. So Jacob Schiff was a billionaire and he cared about Jews, right? He was Jewish and he cared about Jews, and he wanted to use his fortune to benefit the Jewish people. So he was probably a Zionist, and he definitely helped support the revolution that overthrew the czars. Why? Well, the czars were anti-Semitic. The czars,
same
when
person?
Japan had a war with the czars, correct. Japan, and so he was helping. He hated the czars. The czars were anti-Semitic. They were very repressive of Jewish people, and they had pogroms. And so Western Jews wanted to overthrow the czarist government. That's it. That's the explanation, Ian. I mean, I didn't. I mean, did you not know that?
Why is that? So it's like you. I mean, you've been saying this for the last several shows. There's no such thing as a nation state. There's no such thing as a nation. But then you're like, oh well, because they're Jews. So why are they the except? Why do they get to have a nation?
I mean, the British backed the Japanese too.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I I'm confused. I mean, why?
Well, no,
why
I'm confused with what you're saying, and I think ultimately what you're saying results from a confused understanding of what I'm saying. I mean, I think that's just what's going on. So no, I understand nation states are real. I'm saying that nation states aren't the primary actors, right? I'm saying that the class is the primary actors, and you have to understand the behavior of nation states in terms of the class that owns them. And you can't just ignore that there's an actual hegemonic global class interest specifically to destroy socialism and to maintain the class relations that have existed for a couple hundred years in the West. So that is very important to them, and that is the motive that got them to create fascism in Western Europe, put Hitler in power, put Mussolini in power, unleash those powers domestically against communists, and then internationally against the Soviet heartland. So that was what was motivating those wars in World War II, and the same thing is happening today. The Western
Well, they're
ruling
considered
class,
it. I mean, most people say these are inter-imperialist wars, not, conspiracies against the Soviet Union per se.
Well, World War I is the inter-imperialist war. World War II was a war to defeat socialism. It was a war to destroy socialism.
I mean,
Well, I mean, Japan wasn't. I don't think was a socialist country. I don't think anyone calls them. I mean, they were.
Well,
right. I mean, we
if we're
allied with the socialists. Right.
Right.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not that straightforward.
Well, given the two, one has more explanatory power than the other. So my theory, my perspective has more explanatory power. Again, so I'm saying that you have to understand national behavior in terms of class interest. So you don't think that the feudal system in Japan, the imperialist feudal system in Japan, wanted to maintain their class relations? Like, of course they did, and so they were, they definitely wanted to expand their empire.
They acted very capital. I don't think actually, no, I don't think that really applies to Japan at all. They were very. I mean, yes, they were capitalists, of course, but they had that. What do you call it? The Bolshevik culture. I mean, they were very angered by what they saw as betrayal and humiliation from their former Western partners.
They were expansionists. They were imperialists. They wanted to control, Asia, and the United States forced them into a war because the United States saw, hey, if we attack them, it'll be good for the United States. And the United States, again, of course, was the greatest beneficiary of World War II. They didn't sacrifice it all. And at the end of World War II, they accounted for 50% of the global economy and only 5% of the population. So, I mean, the United States played that war really good. I
mean, how do you have it both ways? I mean, so you're saying there's no such thing as nation states, and you're saying the United States played it well, which I agree with.
I'm saying that if you think in terms solely of nation states, you're not going to understand what's going on. You can't understand national behavior unless you understand that there's class relations, that there's a class struggle, and that the ruling classes of the capitalist states have more loyalty to their own class than they do to their nation state or their people. That's really what is fundamentally needs to be appreciated by people who are trying to understand things. And when you understand that there's a greater loyalty to one's hegemonic class interest than there is to their individual nation state, much less the individuals in their, that comprise the majority of those nation states, the working class, then things make a lot more sense. And it explains why Russia or Western Europe was happy to, cut themselves off from Russian oil because, it was disastrous for their working class, but it's part of a strategy to, achieve and, succeed in attaining global hegemony for their class and to defeat the existential threat to their class interests of maintaining and perpetuating this capitalist system throughout the rest of the 21st century, which China really does threaten. just by their example, just by what they've been able to accomplish, just by the fact that they're the number one trading partner of 140 countries, they're the number two trading partners of most of the rest of them. There's no way that they can just sit back and allow this power to displace them, to
so how is that ideological? How is that ideological? I mean, of course, the USA does not want to be displaced by China, but what does that have to do with communism or capitalism? That's just the USA not wanting to be displaced by China. I mean, isn't that basic inter-imperialist conflict? Even if China isn't imperialist, it's still the basic. They want to be top dog, and they want to stay top dog, and they don't want a different economy replacing them.
Well, I mean, I think it's just more than that, right? I think China is a particular threat because they are socialist, and they are proving the superiority of socialism, and this threat of a good example is what is existential. This threat of a good example is what explains our embargo of Cuba, our embargo of DPRK, our invasion of Vietnam. Like, this threat of a good example is what is motivating Western imperialism to have an empire, to control the United States, to control the political parties in the United States, and use those, the military and the economy of the United States to make sure that the world is safe for the capitalists. And this is just what it is. And so China is not just a rival political power. Russia, you could argue, is, but China is more than that. China is an existential threat due to their ideology, due to their threat to be a not just a good example, but a tremendously good example, a ridiculously good example, an absurdly good example. I mean, to just imagine what China has accomplished, and just the trajectory. And we haven't even seen nothing yet from China. So the West,
I just think it's a very American. I'm sorry, Bill, that's a very American-centric viewpoint, because pretty much everybody outside the USA has some form of socialism and knows it works. I mean, the USA is kind of actually in the minority for where you put aside $1 billion for a public project and it all just goes to the billionaires and nothing gets built like that. That's you go to most other countries, you will see nice public works, you will see socialism in action. So you can say China's more socialist, more capitalist.
Is that a question? Like, what's the question? I agree. You do see more socialism, but here's what you also see, right? So you also see right now a dedicated effort to destroy the welfare states of Europe, to turn the welfare states into warfare states. Like, that is going on. And I'm saying
that's been happening though for how long?
No, it's accelerating, Greg. It's accelerating tremendously because Trump is giving them the cover. Trump is giving them the diplomatic cover, the political cover to get it done. And so it's accelerating tremendously. Absolutely. You don't think that things are accelerating tremendously with the destruction of the European welfare states?
No, it's not.
Things are accelerating, but they're not looking to Trump for leadership to help them do that.
Well, I don't think
I say they are. Of course they are. Trump is giving them the impetus. Trump is justifying.
I see no indication they like Trump. I mean, their position seems to be surviving Trump.
Let me explain. It is not politically possible for any government in Western Europe without a huge reason, without a huge justification, to tell the people, hey, your kids are going to die on the Russian front. We're going to destroy our welfare state, and we're going to create a warfare state. That is not palatable. No government could ever get away with that. Trump is allowing them the justification to do just that, Greg. Like, this is the material reality. So when you see merge,
Trump's withdrawing support from the Ukraine war. Okay, so they have to put in more to that. But
yeah, he's threatening to leave NATO, and he's pulling troops out of Germany. He's giving them the cover. He's giving them the political and diplomatic cover to attack the welfare state and turn it into a warfare state. And if you think that is not beneficial to the oligarch class and detrimental to the working class,
they don't want that. They don't want increased class struggle in Europe.
Why would that be increased class struggle? You're winning. You're defeating the working class. You're turning their welfare state into a warfare state.
They're going to piss off their people. That's how it's more class struggle.
No, you're disciplining them, and
I mean, it's just okay. So
You're-
one, it's
Greg, you can't have it both ways. Greg, a second ago, you said they've been going after the welfare state for a long time. And now you're saying, why would they go after the welfare state? That's not good for them. So you got to pick one.
They've been in a neoliberal course for decades, but
Right.
they don't want it accelerated to the point where AFD and all these right-wing populist parties are rising up.
Okay. So you admit it's accelerating, at least. So we can agree that it's accelerating.
Well, it's accelerating because their economy is going down the toilet.
Right. And that was a choice, right? That was the oligarchs made that decision, right? The oligarchs made the decision to suicide their own economies, right?
They made one. None of them decided the current suicide that we're under.
What do you mean?
But the Iran world economic crisis, driven economic crisis that we're entering. We had no sign any of them support that. Yes, they supported the war on Russia, including, to their own destruction economically.
So no, we're gonna disagree, right? So I'm gonna assert that it's theater, that they want to distance themselves, and everybody wants to distance themselves from Trump, and so you're gonna see that. That's a real dynamic that you're gonna observe. People saying things, just like the Democrats, almost all of them except one voted against the War Powers Act with Trump, right? But
Democrats in Europe's different.
Okay, but I'm saying it's not. My assertion is it's not. I'm saying it's the
I
same
know
thing.
you don't have any evidence for it, though. It's
That's
just
fair.
a theory you have.
It is. It's political theater. Is my opinion. And again, we can't resolve this. I can say just look at history, understand this framework, and it makes sense. But ultimately, yeah, it's going to be the future that determines which one of us is correct. That's absolutely right. And I love this discussion. You guys have really forced me to defend my what you would consider erroneous concept. And so, it's hard for me to, when I put myself in your shoes, I kind of feel bad, because if you really don't think what I'm saying is true, it must be kind of boring to listen to me go on and on and on about it. But for me, it's exciting because I think it's absolutely true, and I think future events will bear it out, just like the past 2 years of events have exactly bore out what I expect to see happening given this theory and this framework.
So your AI said one thing that may shed a little light on where you're coming from.
Okay.
To help this out. That you had moved from accepting inter-imperialist rivalry pre-World War II, but post-World War II, you thought that was mostly subsumed because of U.S. power. That's
I don't
how your
quite understand.
AI kind of... Well, like Ian's saying, there's indisputable examples of inter-imperialist rivalry and conflict. And I would say we see it now. And that's what I was arguing is the problem with your theory, is that there is no unified world capitalist class. So your AI said the way to reconcile is that you thought U.S. power after World War II was so overwhelming that it changed that long-standing pattern.
Yeah, no, I mean, reality is different now than it was 100 years ago, and there's no doubt about that. I would say that there is unity within, like I argued earlier, there's unity within the Western establishment, the capitalist class, in their opposition to China, in their certainty that China needs to be destroyed. Now, you guys say there's no evidence for that from the Europeans, that they want to just live in peace under China's shadow. And I'm thinking that's preposterous. And again, we will find out, very soon, because I don't expect Trump to take too long before he really starts ramping up efforts to take out China. But, all of this is going to be catastrophic, and it's not going to succeed. But these are the two things. It's futile and it's not going to succeed, but there's no sign that they're stopping or slowing down. And so, even with Iran, they're not stopping or slowing down. I mean, the U.S. is actively not looking for a solution, right? And there's a reason for that. It's because that's not the end goal. Like, Iran is not the end goal. Iran is a stepping stone. So we're going to see this play out. I think the future events will vindicate my approach. But yeah, I mean, to your question, Greg, I mean, I remember what you're referring to, and the point was we're kind of describing how things are different now than they were before World War I. There was definitely inter-imperialist rivalry before World War I. World War II saw the transition of the capitalist Western headquarters from Britain, and France to the United States, and those, the headquarters shifted to the United States, and so we've had a U.S. Headquartered Western capitalist hegemon, especially since 1991. But again, they're looking around the world and they're seeing that China is a threat and they have to do something, and they are in process of doing something, and that process involved Iran, Russia, it involved Venezuela, it involved the blockade of Hormuz, right? This is all China is in the background, and you can't neatly detach this China aspect from everything that's going on. But
I just, I'm sorry, Billy Bob, but the more, I mean, it's good. I mean, thank you for explaining all this. But the more I listen to it, I think it is. I mean, it's not accidental. It's American centric. It's too American centric. It's just this idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say, as an American too, I can understand coming to think that the America is the center of the universe, will always be the center of the universe, but. Especially if you talk to people outside of America, they don't think that way. The second the U.S. is unprofitable and unbeneficial to what they want, they will stab Americans in the back in a heartbeat. I've talked to enough, I've argued with enough Euro federalists and Euro nationalists to know this. They will.
Yeah, but Ian, you're saying that like it's a disagreement with anything I've said, and I don't think it is, and I think it's not. I think it's true. But here's the thing, and that's why, and that explains why it's the United States that is going to be setting the price for energy. That's why they are destroying West Asian energy, why they're destroying Russian energy. So no country can tell the United States what the fuck they're going to do. They're the headquarters of the global capitalist class, and they're going to maintain their hegemony, and they're going to discipline, and they're going to make sure that everybody has to supplicate themselves to the United States, because we're the ones that have the energy that they're going to need to survive. It's not addressing, it's not contradicting anything I'm saying, and it's frustrating.
Well, you say it's not contradicting anything you're saying, and then you immediately contradict it. I mean,
okay, how? I'm listening.
The
how?
USA does not have unlimited power, and you're saying, okay, you're right, but the USA is going to have unlimited power. It's like, no, it's not.
The U.S. is trying to attain a global energy monopoly. I mean, why isn't that entering into your thinking? They're trying to attain a global energy monopoly.
Why would literally everyone else in the world just sits there and lets that happen? I'm going to deliberately throw away all of my money and become basically 10% as rich as I was because the USA wants the monopoly.
Okay,
let me ask you this.
No. Let me ask you, why did Europe allow the Russian Nord Stream to get destroyed? Why did they do that? It's the same reason. Your answer to that question is my answer to your question. Oh wait, because you think because they hate
Russians and wants every Russian to die. That's literally it. It's not more complex than that.
So they took the abuse in order for the bigger cause of hurting Russia.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's it. That's it. They took the abuse, so they're taking it for the greater cause of weakening and defeating China. So that's my argument.
Huh?
What?
Said that. So Western Europe is taking the abuse of the greater in order to have the greater cause of weakening and defeating China. It's short-term pain for long-term gain, global hegemony throughout the rest of the 21st century. That's what the oligarchs want.
Why don't we just use Occam's razor here? They're going to war with Russia because they want to war with Russia, and you're saying no, it's 5,000 dimensional chess. They actually want to fight China because they're communist.
It's a strategic sequencing. Strategic sequencing is You
No, I
don't.
mean, Russia is a thing unto itself for Europe. There's no denying that.
No, it doesn't make any
Access
sense
to Russia.
No,
Access to Russia gives them a golden age.
they really thought that Ukraine was going to defeat Russia.
That's what they
Well,
put
it's
everything.
not, I mean, it's not the first time they've tried it.
Right.
I mean,
You're talking about World War II?
they were doing this. I mean, the Austrian Empire,
Napoleon.
right? I mean, in Poland, yeah. I mean, it's not. I mean,
It's 'cause they hate
been in
Slavs.
Crimean War.
They've
So
been
you
in
agree, Greg? It's because
conflict.
they hate Slavs. What are we
Not
saying? here?
Slav, it's about imperialism. Inter-imperialist
there is-
conflict, and Russia is the big prize.
Okay, so
mean-
again,
I mean, we
I'm
can-
saying that's a narrow view. I'm saying that is not looking at things as a whole. It's looking at isolation.
Russia's
and
the
one event
biggest
in
country in
isolation.
the world.
And you can't.
I mean, it's
no,
a real
it makes no sense.
thing.
Listen, it's a basic Marxist tenet. You cannot understand anything unless you understand how that thing relates to everything else. So actual understanding is just knowing how things relate to each other. That's what understanding is. In my framework, Russia relates to everything, and that it's strategic sequencing, and there is no way that you're going to be able to weaken China without dealing with Russia. There's no way you're going to be able to weaken China without dealing with their oil imports from West Asia. So again, this is strategic sequencing, and it's been a decades-long project. But it's great. Like, no, if you guys don't think there's ever going to be a pivot to China coming, if you think that there's not going to be any effort to
imagines a pivot to China, do we know that Europe imagines a pivot to China? Do we have any evidence?
I assert that they do, and I mean, they're
But
hostile to
where's
China.
I mean, do they have their white papers? Like, where's this evidence?
Okay, didn't they seize?
We can see it everywhere in the U.S. planning and ideations.
No.
Where is it?
Is Adrian Zinz from the United States? He's German, isn't he? So no, they hate China. Like the oligarchs, the European oligarchs, they hate China. Like, I mean,
Billy Bob, you keep saying I'm right, but then you repeat the point. The Europeans would side with China over the USA in a heartbeat if they thought China was stronger than the USA. They would do it in a heartbeat. They wouldn't even hesitate. It would have if the dollar collapsed. If the dollar,
that's an assertion you're making, but I would disagree with it.
You never let me finish. You just keep talking. Let me finish, for God's sake. If the dollar collapsed, there's just a black swan event that wrecked the U.S. economy. Do you think the Europeans are going to say we are loyal to USA, or do you think that no, they wouldn't? They would go to China. They would fly. They would buy They would take their jets to Beijing an hour after that happened to say, hey, we're your allies. No, I mean it's delusional.
And we like how you believe in the rule of law and international law, and
I mean they side with whoever is stronger. Right now, you look on paper, you're like, oh, nukes, military capacity, economy size, USA is the strongest as of right now. It's not as strong as it was, but still on paper, take all factors in, it's the strongest. I mean, if that changed, they would side with whoever was stronger. They absolutely would, and there's no evidence that they wouldn't. I mean, why would they side with the weaker? I mean, if you're a capitalist in Europe, why would you side with someone who's weaker? Why would you deliberately side with the weaker side? Why would you want to do that?
I don't want to cut you off. Let me know when I can answer.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's it. That's a question. Why would you side with the weaker side?
Here's what I hear you asking. When the U.S. loses to China and China is the hegemon and Western Europe knows that it's hopeless, what are they going to do? I think you might be right. And that after China wins and the U.S. loses, Western Europe is going to have to, and it's hopeless, right? It's hopeless. There's nothing they can do. They might brew a plan. They might brew a 50-year plan and try and, make some real strong power to go after. But yeah, no, I'm not sure the utility of your question. I mean, if things were different, things would be different. Absolutely. I'm saying the way things are right now is that Western Europe has tied they're thrown their lot in with this anti-China strategy. And they are all on board. They are not being coerced. They feel like the United States feels that China is an existential threat to their system and their privilege and the benefit they get from that system. And again, this is a system that benefits, the 1% at the detriment, at the expense of the vast majority of people. And that's the system they want to perpetuate. China threatens that system, and they are all on board with trying to fight against that thing that threatens their system. I think China's going to win. I think, the world will shift towards more egalitarianism and towards more progress because of the great example that China is going to set. And, again, and this is the same example that Cuba could have demonstrated, the same example that North Korea could have demonstrated if it were not for Western imperialism, not U.S., the Western empire, the Western capitalist class, attacking them mercilessly for decades. And so China broke out of that. The West made a mistake. The West sees their mistake, and they're working to correct it. And very soon, again, in my opinion, we're going to see things like an actual embargo. We're going to probably see proxy wars. And when that happens, we can reconvene, and I can tell all you guys, I told you so. And I really am looking forward to that day. But let me ask you guys this. So it's kind of heated, and I have, an ego, and I have an attitude, and I have, a lot of emotion. And so I just want to make sure that we're enjoying these discussions, and that I'm giving you guys a chance to speak, and that I'm not being too condescending. You know what I'm saying? Because really, I want to learn how to engage these discussions in a substantive way. And it's a struggle, and it's a skill. It is not easy to do, but I'm trying to get better. And that's my goal, is so rational people can discuss different viewpoints and have a better understanding of the situation and a better understanding of each other's opinions. And so I hope I wasn't too, verbose and condescending and all those things.
No. No,
okay, good.
It's good to have impassionate. If it was boring, no one would watch. We should even throw some. Maybe we could even throw some chairs. Throw that in. Yes, throw some chairs and furniture. That would work too. Anything to go viral.
I'll break my screen.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, anything else you guys want to say? Like, no, I get it. I honestly, each time we talk, I'm just kind of shocked that you guys don't agree with me. I'm just shocked at the pushback, and it's really intriguing to me, and it's interesting. Which might just demonstrate my own insanity. It's possible.
Well, you got a logical theory, but the devil's in the details. I mean, Cuba, for example, I don't think any of Europe is voting to maintain the ongoing economic war against Cuba. I think practically only Israel in the world votes.
But they don't need to. And this is the theater. This is the game of theater.
But we don't have the evidence for a lot of this. In fact, we have evidence of the opposite. That's where the devil's
evidence
in the details.
is the embargo still going or not? That's the evidence. And yes, the embargo still going. Yeah, there's lip service against it, just like with Trump. Like, oh, there's all this opposition. No, there's no evidence for opposition. There's words, but there's not deeds.
No, there's plenty of evidence of opposition. We don't have evidence for the global collusion. That's what's only in theory.
No, all the evidence is saying everybody's on board with Trump's wars, and with this,
we have no evidence for that. We have
that's where all the evidence is pointing.
I mean, what would
that's where your theory points.
Did you expect them to attack Trump? I mean, did you expect them to go declare war on the USA and defend Iran? I mean, just what would disprove your theory?
If JFK, we know what happened to JFK when he really did something that irritated the ruling class, right? And that's what they could do to Trump. Like, Trump is old. Trump could be killed in a billion ways if they wanted to. They could also do it politically. They could just politically do, they didn't have to have, just one Democrat to support him. I mean, they could have kept that one Democrat, so it's theater.
But again, the theory is sloppy here because, the U.S. ruling class would kill Trump, not the European or the Asian ruling class.
Well, when I talk about opposition, in my mind, I'm thinking domestic opposition. So you're agreeing there is no domestic opposition, Greg? You're siding with me on this one?
There's opposition, but I think they've mostly done, your version applies to the U.S. for me, that the ruling class has decided to give Trump a chance, even though they, don't feel good about what he's doing. They didn't know what to do, so they turned it over to him. That's my sense of it.
Yeah, well, there's a
But
strategy.
I don't feel like the European ruling classes turned it over to Trump.
No, they're playing the same game. They've turned it over, and they're going to facilitate however they can while they try and distance themselves because they know what a catastrophe results. And so, okay, so we were going to talk about Project Freedom. So on Monday, Project Freedom, Trump was allegedly going to liberate all these tankers trapped in the Strait of Hormuz. And so I guess he sent a destroyer over there, and Iran fired a couple missiles, and the destroyer turned around and left. And so that was it for Project Freedom. But so again, I think what is going on is we will continue to see, because what is clear is Trump isn't looking for a solution, and Trump initiated this all on his own. I mean, not all on his own, but this war against Iran, was not really caused by anything Iran did, right? It was a war of choice. The West is waging war on Iran of their own volition and not out of any actual threat or anything like that. And so we know that it was initiated on purpose. We know that there's not currently any effort to, come to any kind of rational, peaceful settlement and bring peace. So again, all of this kind of, just justifies my suspicion that it's a means to an end, and we're moving in a particular direction. And again, that particular direction is China. That particular direction includes an effort to maintain a monopoly on global energy supplies, weaponize that monopoly against the economy of China and against the economy of anybody who dares to side with China. It's all about isolating China, making us the indispensable nation that alone can provide the energy that your country needs. And we're going to force you to side with us against China. And this is how, this is going to play out. But what was the point of me launching into that diatribe again? Like I've been saying this.
You wanted to bring up Iran. And do you remember what I said on the show right at the beginning of the Iran war? Because if you remember, if you watched those first couple shows, you were very sure that the USA was going to give up. I mean, that's what you said. So the USA is going to give up. And I was saying no, and the reason why is because the USA does not have the conventional force to win, but there's no diplomatic off ramp. You can go, if you don't remember, you can go back and watch that show. That's what I was saying. It's just going to drag on and on and on because the USA is going to get in that quagmire. There's no clear way out without making huge concessions, which the USA is not willing to do. So it's just going to drag on until they run out of options.
And I said that wasn't true.
Right. You were sure that the USA was just going to give up. And I was saying no. And now you're kind of, and now you're saying it's actually 12-dimensional chess. I see these other videos. I do see the arguments you're talking about. There's, which is interesting because it started with Trump supporters. Like within, it did actually start on those conservative pro-Trump channels to say, oh, well, Trump is actually playing, 5D chess to take over the world's oil supplies to make America great again. Then like 48, 72 hours after that, I started seeing, the left-wing Marxist channels saying that too. So it's kind of interesting. They both agree with each other. The Trump supporters and the Trump detractors agree that Trump is playing this master game. And I think the rest of us are kind of like, well, I don't think there was a clear plan here. I think it's very erratic and impulsive decision making. And you can absolutely, you can throw crap on a wall and see a pattern, but it's still random. There is, human beings do have very heightened pattern identification instincts. But it also causes us to see patterns where there aren't any. And I think this is one such example.
No, that's fair. I want to push back on this idea that I thought the plan was for the U.S. to leave Iran. I'm not sure the context of the discussion, but I think I've been consistent. I think I've always said that, the United States will not get regime change in Iran. What'll inevitably happen if they keep pushing it, and I expect they will keep pushing it, is that you're just going to see a total destruction of Gulf energy. in the West, the Western oligarchy is willing to pay, in their efforts to contain China. That's what they're willing to do. They would rather not. They would rather just regime change Iran and take the oil, but that's not going to be possible thanks to Iran's resistance, just like it's not possible to take Russia's oil thanks to Russian resistance. So I support and appreciate the the strength of Iran and Russia. And thank God that they are there resisting and pushing back and not allowing the Western oligarchy to just, attain total global hegemony and defeat China, So, but, I think I've been consistent about that. And so I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing, but I do kind of push back on this idea that you were right. And now I'm switching my tune because I don't see that. But,
you did say the USA would back down.
I think it's a great disagreement over, is there a plan? Is it just chaos, or is there a plan? And I am an absolute planning person. I am on the side of there's a plan. And so I appreciate that you're on the side of chaos. And I think if things continue to unfold exactly as they have, and again, so I predicted that Trump would win the election. I predicted that Trump would attack Iran. I predicted the Strait of Hormuz would be closed, and I predicted that the West wanted that to happen. So, and that all has come true. Okay, you're giving me a funny look, Ian. Like, don't give me that look.
I don't remember you ever saying they wanted the Strait of Hormuz closed. Well, everybody was saying they didn't believe Iran had.
Yeah, no, that's unfortunate, Ian, that you don't understand what my perspective is. It's very unfortunate because, like, we've been doing these shows a long time. So I published articles. I was so certain in 2024, in October, I published an article at the Greenville Post explicitly saying that. Saying, heretofore, the threat to close the Strait of Hormuz has been it's been a threat, right? What is the word? But now, I said now
deterrent.
It's become what?
A deterrent? Is that the word?
A deterrent. Thank you. So the threat to close the strait has been a deterrent, but now it has become an enticement. Like that was my argument. That has been my consistent argument since before Trump was elected. So again, they want to, they understand there's no way they're going to harm China without harming the global economy. And this is why war with Iran would have the benefit of harming the global economy without directly tipping their hand that they're going to war with China. And it's a good, plausible deniability, and it's part of this strategic sequencing. It's one of the things that has to happen in order to attain this energy monopoly that can then be weaponized against China. So I've been consistent about this, and not only did I publish it, but I've published at least 3 I told you so's on my Facebook post, quoting my actual article from 2024, saying, look, I was right, and I expect to continue to be right. And again, continuing to be right is going to involve a pivot towards China, a declared energy embargo of China, and perhaps a proxy war against China. Will the whole thing fail before it even gets to that point? Will Iran break the back of Western imperialism? I don't think so. I think Iran is. I think it might break the back of the global economy, but that's not going to stop the West. The West is okay sacrificing that in order to attain their hegemonic interests, in order to defeat China. All of this is going on to defeat China, and ignoring that just means that you don't get it. Is my opinion, and that's really patronizing of me to say. But I think we don't have long to wait. And if it never happens, if there's never a pivot to China, if there's never an embargo of Chinese oil, I will say I was wrong. But again, you got to understand it from my perspective. Like I predicted Trump would win. I predicted that the Strait of Hormuz would be closed, and I predicted that they wanted that to happen. And
when
so
you say there's an embargo of Chinese oil, what does that mean? That they're going to cut off imports to China?
Well, that's the point. They're going to weaponize this monopoly of global energy to not allow China to access it in order to harm their economy. And there's a closing window of opportunity.
I will gladly take the other side of that bet. And if I lose, I will film myself buying a copy of The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump. I'll say, you were right. Donald Trump is a genius. He was playing 12-dimensional chess. It's a 1,000-year Trump plan, 1,000 years of Trump. You were right. But
Yeah,
yes.
no, I mean they're pursuing it's the continuity of agenda. This agenda didn't start with Trump. I mean, it started under Obama. It was made possible by shale oil, by shale, natural gas and fracking, and by U.S. Energy reserves. So the U.S. is the greatest producer of energy right now of any country. So, and they're the number one exporter of liquid natural gas. So anyway, there's a monopoly there. So the U.S. right now, as far as this strategy goes, the U.S. is in the phase of the strategy where they are consolidating an energy monopoly. That is what is going on right now. And they're trying to do that with as little pain as possible to the global economy. But obviously, they're willing to bring significant and serious pain. But we're getting ready. We're putting the pieces in place. We are, accumulating this energy monopoly that we control. So, remember Saudi Arabia set the price of energy in 2016 and 2020, and they crashed the oil price market, and they brought the price way down by ramping up production, and they caused a lot of U.S. producers to go out of business because our shale oil is expensive. Well, we're turning the tables on that. We're going to have our own monopoly. We're not going to let OPEC be determining the price of energy. We're going to be able to set the price of energy. We're going to have the energy monopoly, and we're going to weaponize both of those things against our primary rival. Greg, I'm interested in you shaking your head. Like, that's just so true. So how could you possibly dissent?
Well, it doesn't make sense on so many levels.
Okay.
Well,
do you want to elaborate?
Do you think the Gulf is gone permanently as an energy supplier?
I think so. I think for years, I think we can just consider West Asian energy production significantly deteriorated for years.
So that means we have a long-term
but that's just right now
collapse, including massive demand destruction, which will wreck the U.S. economy. So we're disarmed from the Iran war, and we're going to come out with losing the dollar hegemony and in a depression.
Look, if we monopolize energy, how do we lose dollar hegemony if we have an energy monopoly?
Because we're going to be in a Great Depression because of massive demand destruction all over the world, including in the U.S.
So you're saying that nobody's going to want our energy? They're not going to have to buy it in U.S. dollars?
Well, number one, we're not going to remain. The Gulf's not going to be offline. I don't see how it could be offline forever. But if it is, energy use is going to go down a lot because the U.S. can't supply what's being removed.
Well, you're describing what I'm describing. Like that's what I see happening. So, and again, it's not gonna destroy U.S. dollar hegemony because the United States is gonna have an energy monopoly, and everybody's gonna have to buy their energy from the United States.
We don't have the energy to fill in. U.S. produces 13 million barrels a day and uses 20. So we're not going to be able to sell the whole world energy.
Mexican oil. We control Canadian oil. We control Venezuelan oil. We control the choke points that oil travels through. So no, we have we're trying to get a monopoly on oil, and we're going to force people to buy it in dollars. And is there going to be? You're just confirming what I'm saying is yes, there will be.
We buy Mexican and Canadian oil. It's not going to be sent out into the world. There is no major supply of oil that the U.S. can send out into the world and recreate what the Gulf was supplying and reinvigorate the dollar.
So you're describing a global energy scarcity, which is what I've been saying is going to happen.
Right, but you're saying it's going to help the U.S., but there's no surplus for the U.S. to become Saudi Arabia.
No, it will help the U.S., and it's not going to threaten dollar hegemony because the U.S. will be able to dictate which societies are allowed.
Remember, dollar hegemony comes from all the Gulf soaking up the dollars. The Gulf.
Okay, that was untenable. That was not going to. Iran made that untenable. That wasn't going to happen. That was not.
We made that untenable.
And plus, OPEC was the one that was able to exert leverage over the United States by raising and determining what the price of energy was going to be. Saudi Arabia dictated the price of energy in 2016, made a whole bunch of U.S. companies bankrupt. They did it in 2020, made a whole bunch of companies bankrupt, and so we're taking that power from them. we're saying, okay, fuck you, Saudi Arabia. We'll have our own cartel. So the UAE just joined the United States cartel. And again, like I said
But Billy,
earlier,
we'd have to have the oil to export for that. We don't.
okay.
So, Bob, I think you're not understanding quantities. The dollar hegemony is not just percentage.
Well, no, the U.S. is a big exporter of natural gas. And again, it's not just, you know,
we're maxed out.
I'm saying what you're saying, Greg, is that there's going to be a scarcity of energy. And I'm agreeing with you. This has been my point. There's going to be a scarcity. And so this is just, I mean, you could say that, I mean, your argument is that scarcity isn't helping the United States. And I'm saying they think it will. Like, this is their plan. They think that this is going to help them leverage it. And again, they're not going to be, benefiting people's lives.
But it's so unrealistic. You shouldn't use it as a theory to explain what's going on. They might think it and say it, but.
Well, Billy Bob, you're also not understanding that.
Okay. No, I mean, we disagree. We disagree, but I appreciate your robust disagreement, and we'll have to put, we'll reconvene the disagreement. I'm interested in you explaining why that is. Like, I hear your assertion. I don't understand the thought process underlying the assertion, and I'm interested in hearing it. But Ian, what were you saying?
Part of the dollar hegemony is the quantity. So you're saying, oh, well, scarce energy is all in dollars. Well, the point is that it's scarce, and that's going to drive down the amount of dollars in circulation so far down. The USA's economy is untenable. It's $40 trillion in debt. Its deficit is, its debt is higher than the total GDP. And what Greg is saying is you cannot even begin to replace the quantities that the Gulf states provide, which is what's going to cause inflation, because that's what's stopping inflation now, that so many people, so many different transactions every single day use the dollar. If you cut that by a certain percent, I don't know what that percentage is, but we're talking about a lot, causing a global recession. That's good. I think that won't hurt the dollar.
Look, you guys are looking at things. I don't think you're looking at things correctly. So let me make a couple points. So again, we're talking about the West's relationship to other currencies and to other nations, right? And so yes, everybody will be hurt. But ultimately, the West and the United States specifically will see its power, its global power and influence increase relative to everyone else. Like, that is the plan. They're going to hurt everybody so hard that, the United States itself will be cushioned, so to speak, due to the fact that they will be controlling the energy. And again, we're a net energy exporter. I understand that we don't export enough energy to make up for West Asian energy production. Of course, that's absolutely true. And that's why I'm saying there's going to be a scarcity. And it also will be bad for the working class of the United States and the working class of the world. However,
we're literally an oil importer. So, I mean, that's kind of distorting it.
Well, no, because Greg, I've already explained, right? I've already explained that we control Mexican oil, we control Canadian oil, we control Venezuelan oil.
We receive it. We don't control it. I mean, we receive it, but they could.
Those governments do what we say. Those corporations do what we say. That's something we can control. We can't control
we have to buy
Iranian
it from them. We have
contracts. And we can tell them not to trade it with China, and they won't. Just like we told Venezuela. We control what happens to oil. We control the currency it gets sold in. We control the price it gets sold in, and we control who it gets sold in. That's fucking control.
The USA.
You think fucking Mexico's fucking sovereign? Canada's a fucking sovereign state? No, it's ridiculous. So again, you can't just look at U.S. domestic production. I'm talking about a global energy monopoly controlled by the United States. Global energy monopoly controlled by the United States and weaponized against those countries that don't do what we say. That's what's going on, and it's going to be catastrophic. But no, hey,
how is the USA, if the USA bank goes bankrupt from the dollar collapsing, how is the USA going to force those countries to do anything?
What are people going to turn to, Ian? What currency are people? No, the dollar will be strengthened, Ian. The dollar
How
will be
is the
strengthened
dollar going to be
because everybody
strengthened
has to use it to buy our energy, and everybody's going to need our energy, and there's going to be a
Except, but
shortage of
there's
the
no
energy.
energy
And there's going to be
available
no
to sell
currency
that there's
that
not
rivals
now.
the U.S. dollar. Where are people going to go other than the U.S. dollar?
Any other
In my
currency?
scenario,
Their own currency, literally any other currency.
Oh,
Gold?
really? So the euro
Why
is going to
not?
be of more value coming quickly. So here's what's going to happen in Europe, Ian. So Europe is going to have a total depression. European manufacturing is going to move to the United States because European manufacturing can't afford to exist with the price of energy that will be in Europe. They will have to move and relocate to the United States, and Trump will declare, "Hey, look, this is a win. We're reindustrializing. So we're going to deindustrialize Europe, and they're all going to move to the United States, where energy is less expensive,
Why would
and
they move to the USA and not China?
Oh,
Or
because
Vietnam or South Korea?
Okay, because there's going to be a Cold War against China. There's going to be an embargo against China. I mean, this is what's going on. But anyway, okay, guys, fine.
Don't you see this circular logic here? Because we ask
no,
you,
it's a consistent logic, and you could say it's circular, but so you know, it's to me it's far more persuasive than any rebuttal that I've heard. But I appreciate, you know, being challenged and getting me frustrated trying to explain things. You know, and again, we haven't seen it, right? We haven't seen it. What we've seen is maybe 10% of the strategy. The main event is going to be China, and we're not even there yet. And again, I just predict it's going to be a huge global changing event like no one has ever seen before. It'll make COVID look like, you know, a walk in the park. And so no, huge things coming up. And I think that, you know, it's I think it's obvious, and I am, you know, pulling my hair out trying to explain why I think it's obvious. And you guys aren't buying it. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're not buying it. And so, but yeah, I mean, well, I guess we need to wait. You know, you gotta understand things from my perspective. You know, I've been, you know, saying this will happen, and then it's all kind of lining up. And so and it just gives me certainty that the rest of what I'm saying is also going to line up. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not true. I haven't heard a persuasive explanation for why it's not true, but I understand that you guys each think that there are persuasive reasons for what I'm saying not to be true. And so, I guess that's just called disagreement.
I mean, just my closing thought is that, I mean, we're not saying it's necessarily not true. There's just no evidence for it. When we tell you, well, there's closer there's regional and closer explanations for those things. You know, Europeans want to fight Russia for its own sake. Israel wants to fight Iran for its own sake, you know, and so on. So on. It's like, well, that's just the small picture, you know, the big picture. Well, I mean, there's just no evidence for it. That's the fundamental. Maybe for the next show, that's the fundamental issue is the lack of evidence. If you find evidence for it, then it's a considerable theory. We just need some evidence.
Yeah. Greg, what about Brian Berleg? So you pretty much reject, because he's saying very similar things to me, and you kind of just reject it.
I mean, I think, you know, like what you're saying, these are ideals of certain planners maybe, but yeah, I don't think this is a useful explanation for what's going on.
Okay. No, and you
know, the whole idea of an embargo on China through war with Iran is so sloppy. I can't buy it. And so destructive, because we're getting ourselves disarmed and really damaged.
Yeah, no, there's contradictions.
And
right?
we could just blockade China if we wanted to. We didn't have to go through all this and weaken ourselves.
But it's about strategic sequencing, right? And it's about, you know, justifying certain things and rolling things out in a strategic sequence. And no strategy is going to be without contradictions. And so, you know, as those contradictions manifest, like
more than a contradiction. I mean, I view this as, just to go on record again here, this is the U.S. Suez Canal crisis. This is not stage one in a glorious conquest. This is, you know, we're terminal stage here.
Well,
I think it underestimates the strength and ability of the United States to really do serious damage. I think you're underestimating.
We've seen 80 years of it. I think we're getting to its close.
No. I mean, no. I think we haven't even seen it start yet. I think we're gonna see the damage start. And the U.S. is capable of causing serious damage, and they're not giving up. There's no sign that they've agreed to peace in our time and let's just go along to get along. We'll just be friends and mutual prosperity. That's
not going to happen. But we're
right.
The dollar's going to crash and our military's losing and getting disarmed.
Okay. Guys, really fun. I it gives me heart that I know other rational people. Otherwise, I'd really start thinking I'm crazy. This conversation would make me crazy because we're 2 hours in and I haven't convinced you, and that's perplexing to me. But then I realized that there's other thoughtful people that agree with me, and that makes me feel better. I was kind of alone on this panel. But no, I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. And Greg, you're standing your ground. You're strong. And Ian, it's fair. Where's the evidence? And I concede that the undebatable evidence is in the future. I think there's plenty of evidence in the past that you can look to and see, but the undeniable evidence is definitely before us. And so until that happens, I don't begrudge people for not just agreeing with me. So you're a thoughtful person, and so good discussion. We will reconvene. We will reconvene very soon, and we'll try not to make this monotonous and unappealing to viewers, and where we're just rehashing the same stuff. But I really did enjoy the 2 hours. Okay, I'm going to end the stream, and Greg, we'll have you back very soon. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, all the commenters.
Thanks, Billy.
Okay.
See
you guys.